Hey, this is Alex Burkett, and you're listening to the Long Game Podcast. This episode is part of our Kitchen Side series, where we pull back the curtain and show you behind the scenes at the conversations, debates, strategies, corny jokes, and brainstorming sessions that we have at our agency, Omniscient Digital. In this episode, we're discussing organic traffic. Namely, is organic traffic, search traffic, the best traffic for content marketers to aim for? I'll give you a spoiler. Obviously, the answer depends on many factors. But we're not going to use the "it depends" response as a cop-out. Instead, we're going to still come strong and potentially wrong in my case with opinions, and you'll leave this conversation, hopefully, with a better understanding of content strategy than when you entered it. Without further ado, here is the Long Game Podcast.
So on this episode of Kitchen Side, I'm talking to our founders, Alex, David, and Allie, on the topic of organic traffic and whether or not it's the best kind of traffic. So first, let's differentiate between different types of traffic. We have organic, paid, direct. Any other forms you guys want to speak to? I'd like to take that one.
I guess it's referral, but...
Referral, social media, I guess. You
Right.
could qualify that as some form of referral as well.
Mm-hmm.
Direct is kind of the bucket that people use, or Google Analytics at least uses for a lot of different types of traffic. So if you send a Slack message to somebody and they open that link, that's considered direct traffic. But it's kind of a referral as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say like there's direct, and then there's organic. So it's somebody searching for a specific intent, and then there's sort of serendipitous, which would include paid, social media, referral, anything where the person's not searching for your content and not necessarily like intent based, but they may find it accidentally. Like those are the kind of categories that I categorically think of traffic in those kind of like temperatures.
Cool.
There was previously dark traffic. I don't know if that's a thing anymore, if that problem's been solved, but
What was that?
it's like when people share articles through Slack or text message or something, it's this
it's
dark traffic bucket, but it just becomes part of, I think it became part of direct traffic.
Direct.
Or
It gets bucketed into direct and other. That's not solved. That's the case with a lot of traffic. Like if you share a link in a Facebook message and a text, all that kind of stuff. But I guess like you could probably qualify that as direct traffic, since the person is they're sharing it and you're going directly to that link to go to that website. So I guess you could qualify it the same.
Okay. So would you say that organic traffic is the best? Why or why not?
Absolutely not.
It depends.
David just says that and
Yes.
then mutes himself. He's like,
I think
done.
personally that social media traffic is the best because it's inherently unpredictable and people have very low intent.
Interesting.
No, that's
You said that
sarcasm.
straight face. You're very good at that.
Yeah. Apparently, Allie's not the only one who can not tell when I'm making a
Can
dry
never
joke.
tell.
Can't tell.
Your face is the same.
I think that organic traffic is probably the best for most companies because it's predictable and because you can build it up over time. But best, you have to qualify what best means. You have to define that, because best doesn't mean the highest intent. I think direct traffic is the best in that sense. Oh, also, by the way, there's email traffic. So that's kind of different than direct, and it's kind of different than referral, but it's still owned, and I would still push it into the direct temperature category.
Yeah.
So I think your goal actually as a content marketer, whichever other channels you use to build up your audience, your goal should actually be to build the direct bucket. Because that sort of like implicitly says that more and more people are interested in going to you for your expertise and your knowledge. And if you're not growing that, you're probably just getting a bunch of low fit audience. If you're not accumulating an email list, if you're not having more and more people type, beomniscient.com into the search bar, I just think your efforts are probably, you're not getting traction with the audience that you should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to answer in two ways. So I didn't think about this before, but that idea of direct traffic probably being in general, maybe best traffic because people are going directly to you for whatever reason, or people are sharing your stuff with other people.
Yeah.
And organic traffic is more of it depends, because in my experience, a lot of folks will end up trying to grow organic traffic, but ends up being really trash traffic, but doesn't convert. So if you can get organic relevant traffic, then that's the best traffic, because they're looking for what you're selling or stuff that's related to what you're selling, versus, if you're writing about motivational quotes and you're selling software, no one cares about your software. But if you're a media company and you're writing about motivational quotes and you're getting paid from advertisers based on views, 100%, like, doesn't matter what views you're getting. You should, like, if it's organic, that's great.
But all software companies are media companies in 2021.
It's funny that you said the thing about motivational quotes, because like month after month for years, like I don't even know if I should be doing this, but whatever. The top post for the HubSpot blog was like a motivational quotes post consistently, always like the highest organic traffic. Right. And I just think it was optimized. We kept it updated, but I also think HubSpot as a whole has, the domain rating keeps any of their posts pretty high on the SERPs, but it didn't really serve the business. Like, if anything, it just acted like a billboard. It just like kept the name top of mind. And it obviously helped with like quotes, like it served the query, but like, I don't even think it had a conversion rate at all.
No, but that's interesting, because I'm having an argument in my own head from both sides of this, right? Yeah. Because the motivational quotes thing could be, it's in our category of buzzworthy content in a way, because there's probably a lot of people, a lot of bloggers out there who search motivational quotes for their articles, and they probably link to it. I would guess that the link profile of that piece is amazing. Mm-hmm. But then when it comes down to it, like most content teams, most SEO teams are going to be gold, at least on some level. They may have other more bottom funnel metrics, but they're going to be gold on traffic, organic traffic. So if you picture your efforts as a content marketer on that team, and that motivational quotes post, drops to position 8 or drops to page 2 or something like that. Now, holy shit, your entire traffic for the month is down. So what do?
Yep,
you go basically say, all right, I'm going to replace what I was doing. I'm going to not write this high intent blog post that could bring customers in. And I'm going to go spend my time trying to build links to that piece. And I'm going to try to revamp that. Yep. So it becomes this opportunity cost and simply a distraction. So I can see it being both sides there.
Yeah.
We just saw this happen with a client where they had this really low intent. It was kind of random, but it was like very like low hanging fruit. They wrote the piece like 4 years ago, and it contributed a ton of traffic over the last few years. And this year it started to decline, and it kind of offset our efforts and what we were doing. And they were like, should we rewrite that piece? Should we like update it? And I'm like, not before we do what we're doing. Like, maybe later. It might be helpful to somebody, but it certainly shouldn't be a priority, even though like the traffic is showing it. In that sense, like organic traffic, that's not valuable to the business, even though it looks really good. And I think that's the inherent danger with chasing organic traffic, is it in and of itself could be a vanity metric. Like it doesn't always lead to business, like new business, customers, fans, doesn't always lead to that.
Yeah. And I want to add another layer. I think when you said it's like a billboard, I think it could be, because that's valuable, right? I think it comes down to the company size, the goals, the level of content maturity, and the resources available. Like, if you have all the writers in the world that you can pay, write all that content, rank for all those keywords that are low intent. But hey, you kind of have a billboard where people just end up going on your website, and like maybe eventually they are looking for your software 5 years down the line.
Yeah.
But if you're a small company with limited resources, then you probably shouldn't be writing that low intent stuff. You should write stuff that's like relevant and grow traffic that's relevant, maybe like relevant to the topics that your audience is really interested in, that'll lead to product usage.
Yeah. And when we qualify the term best, I don't necessarily think of it as like what kind of company it's best for. I think about what kind of content it's best for. Like, not every piece of content should be like revolving around organic traffic. If it contributes, great. Yeah. Obviously SEO related content, keyword research, all of that stuff. But just because something doesn't have volume or monthly search volume doesn't mean you shouldn't write it, depending on the intent and how else you plan to distribute.
Prioritizing by search volume also has a lot of inherent problems. One being that they're highly competitive, and sometimes that data is misleading. So I just went after a keyword on my own blog. It's like landing page optimization tools. Ahrefs says that it gets like 1,500 searches a month. I rank number 1 for it, feature snippet and everything. You get like 15, hits a month. So it's it can be wrong data, and that data, everybody else is looking at it too. So that means everybody else is competing for it. So even if it's right, it's going to be very competitive. And often these terms are very high level and high, top of funnel. So prioritizing purely by content volume, you're going to get into this swamp of competition, and it may also not contribute to that bottom line, that important metric for us, which also kind of wraps up to the entire thesis of our agency, which is like content should convert. And then like it also goes back to the conversation we had where it's like that overlap between growth and content. There just needs to be architecture and KPI setting that sets guardrails so you're not misled by kind of vanity metrics.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Yeah. And
but also, oh, sorry. I was going to say the good sides of traffic, or good sides of organic traffic, if you can set those guardrails, are that one, it is pretty predictable, even though there's kind of a margin of error and variance among the accuracy of these tools. But you really can predict the intent of a keyword pretty well, more so than like you really don't have control over direct traffic. It's kind of a long game play, and you're going to build that up over time via your branding and your good writing and audience building. You have very little control over social media and referral traffic, but you do have a semblance of control over the keywords you go after. And if you can set guardrails and parameters that let you hit those high intent terms, it is probably the most predictable.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I think my final one-liner is to the few people listening to this. If organic traffic is your goal, I would recommend you start asking why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What if their SERP competition is high? Would you still say that is important to focus on?
In terms of a specific keyword or for a specific industry?
I don't know. What do you think? Like what would you
Depends on how like competitive your business is. Like if you're just breaking in, if you're just getting started, domain rating of 25, and it's a highly competitive space, like no, that's not worth your energy. We had a conversation about this in another episode. That's not discounting organic traffic as a whole, but we just found this out in our agency. We're a baby, and we were pouring into SEO keyword research content, and it was great. It was valuable. I mean, it might serve a purpose down the line once we continue to grow, but we decided to take all of our eggs out of that basket and work on other kinds of content with other traffic goals and other distribution goals, because like our space is competitive and we're still kind of like laying a foundation for our agency digitally and like, as a company.
Yeah, we wrote a post a while back on the concept of content economics. So there's kind of an inherent unfairness in the content world, and that like the bigger your domain rating is, the more weighty your website is, essentially the easier the crappier your content can be, and you can still get away with it and you can still rank. So when it comes down to these competitive keywords with a lot of traffic, the only ones that can feasibly rank are those like the top level domain ratings anyway. So if you're coming in as a new site, you shouldn't go after those unless you've got some like 5-year time horizon and then like this crazy, strategic edge that you can exploit to get to those keywords. But even then, ask yourself, like if 10,000, 100,000 people are searching for this, how many are actually going to, go in and buy based on a keyword that's like, what is content marketing or something like that, versus something more specific that may have 20 searches a month or none, that's very, very specific to a pain point that your audience actually has and that you have a chance to compete for and that you can differentiate on. I mean, as a smaller company, I would go for those all day. And I would actually argue that bigger companies should too. Like the domain rating doesn't necessarily imply that you should go after high traffic keywords just because you can. There's still a lot of vanity within those.
The other thing I'll say about pursuing organic traffic, I mean, the typical process is to identify keywords that are ranking high and drive traffic in that sense. But that essentially meets people where they already are. And there's value in that. But if you're playing in a new space, if you're leading with like a thought leadership based content strategy, revolving your entire process around keywords can be a little disheartening when you're trying to create demand versus meet it. And in that sense, like, I mean, I've seen it time and time again with clients and other people. They're like, oh, we have these ideas for all these keywords. And then we do the research on the volume and the potency of those. And there's not a lot of volume. And they're like, oh, never mind. I'm like, wait a second though. Like these are great topics. These are great stories to tell, like super high intent. Maybe it's like your brand versus competitor and there's just not a lot of volume there. That's still traffic, that's still content that's worth creating. But the thing about organic traffic is a lot of it is about expectation setting and like, playing the long game. It's a time thing. You have to wait. And it's also, it's more than just pushing out content. Like there's I know, Chris, you have a question you'll ask us about like ranking factors. Like there's a lot of other activities that can help that, but it just makes the process a little bit longer than I think some people know. Some people realize. They're like, oh, we have all these keywords and they're like 5-digit volume levels. Like, let's do it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about why, like David said, and like, what is the goal? And, like what level of content are you willing to commit to, and the quality and all of that stuff. Like there's just so much more than volume. And I think a lot of people stop there.
Can we dive into the create demand versus capture demand thing that you mentioned? Because that's interesting. I was thinking back to the time I was at CXL, and we never looked at SEO until maybe like the last couple months I was there, but we would write topics based on what we were reading, what we were seeing with clients. We had a Facebook group and a lot of like active commenters and email subscribers who would, talk to us about their pain points. And we would basically ideate based on those things. And sometimes they would pick up traffic and search engines and sometimes not. But now I'm looking back and I don't know if he made these terms up. Like, I don't know if it was as, strategic as conversational marketing or inbound marketing or something like that. But there's terms that probably didn't have search volume then, but are now like core pieces of conversation in the conversion rate optimization space. Yep. Like smoke testing or painted door testing.
Well, how did any of these terms become high volume terms? Like someone had to start somewhere. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of those terms ended up, I don't know, I mean, to the extent to which they created conversions or whatever, but we started a conversation, and then maybe 2 years later that showed up in the search volume, but it certainly wasn't there when we started those conversations.
Right. And I've heard it said like keyword research is audience research. Like you're essentially trying to understand like what your audience cares about, what they're curious about, what they want to learn, what they want to know, and then, how you can answer them, how you can essentially build the trust and hopefully convert them. But you're working within a realm that's already been established, which is where a lot of that competition comes from. But if you're playing in it, like I said, if you're playing in a new space, if you have all these really new ideas, like I find people limit themselves based on keyword research. And I'm like, no, like keep going, create a new space, corner that part of the SERP. And it might not drive traffic for even like years, but guess what? Like one day when this becomes a commonplace term, you're there, like you're already ranking.
I think
like that skyscraper technique or something.
Yeah. 10X.
Yeah. I think that what you just said of keyword research is audience research needs to be a blog post that everyone needs to read.
Wrote that down.
I was just talking to Glenn about this because we were going back and forth on some keyword research, and we were two arguments were happening. It was like, well, this keyword has volume and it seems related to blah, blah, blah. But like, it doesn't seem too related to the product. So I don't know if we want to do this. And then I was like, wait, like think about the people reading this that would be using their product though. Like if we find the right angle, this could 100% be something they're interested in. Like maybe not directly related to the product, but the persona that our client is targeting is definitely interested in this sort of stuff.
Smart.
Yeah.
And we just have to work an angle of talking about the product somewhere. But I think that's the missing piece in SEO that maybe moving forward is going to become more important, where it's not just looking at the numbers, but also understanding the audience like very deeply and what they're interested in. And that comes from those interviews and just learning about them.
I mean, the way I think about it too is like keywords are super valuable. It's like laying the foundation for a house, and you find this great, plot of land that has lots of potential. And some people just like build a shack on it just to kind of create, like, you're like, oh, I own the space. I have a term, or I have a piece on the term. But then the right way to do it would be like building a mansion or building something that, people want to come in and they want to stay there. They want to like, you want your blog, you want your site to be a destination, not just like a stopover. I guess there is some value in answering a question, helping somebody, like a recipe site. Like, can you imagine the organic traffic on a recipe site? But there's really nothing that comes from that. And that's obviously done intentionally, but like for software, for, content written to convert, there's a whole different approach to it. And sometimes organic traffic's not the best way to do it. And I think that it's going to become less and less valuable traffic, in my opinion, unless Google continues to like prune things. I think if they start prioritizing bylines more and what that means. I don't know how they would do it. Their special Google magic. Saw your message, David. I think
you're on fire today with the sound bites. What is it? You need to build a mansion, not a shack. Your website.
I just came up with that.
Your website needs to be a destination, not a stopover.
That actually wasn't my clip. I actually connected with Jamie Edding the other day and had a whole conversation about their blog strategy. And she's like, I've built the SEO blog. I've done the SEO thing. I think it's valuable. I want my site to be a destination. Like, I want people to type in our URL because they want to read what we've written lately. And you can't do that with just keywords. Now, maybe there's like, it's inherently mixed in, but that's where it becomes more of an art than a science. Like, you kind of like have an influence from keywords, but it's literally not like rooted in that. And that's because of the type of content they want to create. Obviously, there's a time and place for all of that. But no, that wasn't my term.
Tommy Walker's point too, when we talked to him, like, he looks at return visitors as his kind of like North Star metric of content.
Yeah.
Because that implicitly says that, yeah, they've created something worth coming back to. Right. But I was going to take it a higher level up, and like this whole point on like, is, organic traffic the best traffic? I think like we could split that in so many different ways, but like qualitatively and anecdotally, what are your favorite blogs, and are they places that you found, I guess, like organically, or that you go to organically? Or because for me, it's like wait, but why? And I always type it in and I'm like on their email list, and it's never something that I just search for something. And maybe it's my first touch point. Like maybe I found CXL or HubSpot or something like that for the first time, but something about that impressed me, so I came back. So it's like, Allie, your point, like you learn about what people want, what they already know they want. Sometimes there's things that they don't know, but there's a certain level of demand. And SEO and organic traffic is really a distribution strategy by which you can reach them. But everything you do in the middle, that's the important stuff. And that's like how you can build long lasting audiences and real, flywheels for your content program.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this is because I work directly with all this stuff, but I don't really trust my Google results. Like, I mostly use Google to answer a question or figure out like how many cups is in an ounce, like weird stuff like that. I don't really, like, if I'm looking for something to trust and like something to either, subscribe to, or like if something like health related, like something I really want to trust, I might go to Google as like a first stop, but I'll use that as like a springboard into, I don't know. I'm just thinking more like psychologically, like for whoever's listening to this, like think about how you approach Google and how you use it. And in that sense, like that, like flip it the other way, right? And consider like your audience, like, do they even appreciate Google results, or do they tend to trust things coming from other avenues, other channels? And obviously it depends on the industry. I think some industries are still super valuable on Google, but I know like, software is becoming a dime a dozen with some of these queries.
Yeah. I had someone ask me like, hey, how does Google decide what's on their first page? And I was like, oh, let me tell you about the whole game that's being played and why you shouldn't trust those results.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you've seen how the sausage is made, it's definitely like, I approach almost every search with skepticism, especially in certain spaces. Like, I've ranted about this before, but I was trying to write our welcome emails in nurturing sequence. So I would search, welcome email example, how to write a welcome email. And it was all the same bullshit, formatted SEO post, about 22,050 words with the introduction. What is a welcome email? Why you should have a welcome email? And I'm like, just give me a fucking welcome email. Yeah, exactly.
Those are those shacks that are just, they just get the bare bones out there, and they have a little like straw roof. It'll blow over.
You know what I do now though? I don't know this for every space, but the spaces that I do care about and kind of like consider myself a member of those communities, like say CRO and experimentation, or, health and wellness, I either search in Google, a site search, so site : their website and then the keyword that I want, or I go directly to their website and use their internal search function. So I'm almost thinking that could be like an interesting new engagement metric that you look at in tandem with your overall page views and organic traffic, is like, how many people are using your search function? Because then that shows that they're coming to your website and then they're using it to find something specific. But I do that with CXL whenever I want experimentation articles. I do that with examine.com for any like supplements. Like I know I have these trusted sites, and again, I may have found them for the first time in search, but that was really just like the first hello.
Yeah. Introduction.
Interesting stat for us. Our returning visitors is about 25% on the Omniscient website.
Is that good or bad?
No one knows.
No one knows. I'm going to say it's good.
I bet it's pretty good.
I could
It's just
also
me
go down
coming
that
back to
rant,
the
and
website.
that rabbit hole is like when people are like, hey, what's my bounce? Is this a good bounce rate? It's like,
Yeah,
fucking, what's the context?
Our bounce
Yeah.
rate is 64%, which is shitty.
That doesn't mean
I don't
anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
What
Simo Ahava made a website called isthisagoodbouncerate.com or something like that. And it just computes like a random metric. It says like, yes, that's amazing. Like you should get a raise. But yeah, it's
Well, the
totally
funny thing
BS.
about all of those articles that talk about those rates is if you really go down like the source rabbit hole, I think they like literally all connect to each other. Like there's not actually an original source that's quoted. It's just like linking to like listicles of stats. And that's just what it is. So no one knows.
Sorry, it's just in case people are listening, want to check this out. It's whatisagoodbouncерate.com. So it's a fun one.
Is there
There's vanity metrics all over the place, baselines, all that stuff. Like
should we
gotta have context.
buy how long does it take SEO to work.com?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God. It said compiling the Leslie Knope index when it was calculating it for me.
Yeah, so I think Carissa, is your next question on the ranking factors?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Yeah, so there are over 250 Google ranking factors, but what are some of the top ways to increase organic search traffic? Is it targeting keywords, backlinks? Like, what would you say?
I have my answer, but you guys, I would just say like the simplest thing is like content and links. You know, if you can match the search intent with great content, and if you can build links, like there's obviously a lot of fringe factors, but most people overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but instead of just like pursuing links for the sake of it, I would say writing stuff that's worth linking to. And that's like harder.
In the content category though.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's like a secondary factor to like, instead of just writing whatever and then focusing all your energy on links, like it's kind of like a balance, like a scale. Like you pour a little bit here and then you pour a little bit there and it all works together. But I think people are like, I'm just going to write shit and then I'm just going to get a bunch of links to it.
No, write awesome shit that answers users' queries and build links. And then there's like a lot more of it there's going to be, I think, fringe factors related to like author and byline and especially like user experience factors, I think are going to be, you know, if not already, like very important.
Yeah.
So make sure you have a good website user experience. But really, if you're talking about content marketing and blogging in particular, you're really just trying to answer like a user question from search. So if you do that in the best possible way with amazing content, and if you have a high domain rating site,
I would also say like some people neglect what their billboard looks like. Let's just call it that. Like they get the content up, but they don't optimize title. They don't optimize meta. They don't really optimize their URL. I mean, the more and more competitive that search engine results pages become, you kind of have to advertise your content through all of that. And there's ways to do it better, or at least experiment with it. The good thing is you can always change that stuff. But I think a lot of people, that's an afterthought. And then even if they're ranking on page 1, they don't see any traffic because people don't click through to check it out. And they're like, I'm ranking, like what's going on? And it's like, well, your stuff looks not interesting.
Oh, I just realized a heuristic I have where I might land on a website from organic search and the website is just ugly. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to trust this. But the few times that I do continue to read, I'm like, oh, actually, this is really helpful information. So
yeah, I imagine if you kept reading.
It depends what you mean by ugly, because when it gets
Alex has ideas about this.
No, because I actually agree to a certain extent. Like if it looks really corporate and like the text is really small and like it looks like a B2B enterprise, like IBM type site, like I'm out. But if it looks like Paul Graham's website or like literally just HTML on a page, I'm like, all right, this is probably the best fucking source ever. Because if it's ranking this high and like they have no like actual marketing firepower, I'm like, all right, whoever wrote this is probably legit. So it's almost like a U-shaped distribution there.
Yeah.
So the prettiest websites win, the ugliest ones win. It's that weird sloshy middle ground of like enterprisey, crappy sites with like pop-ups all over.
The ones going through digital transformation, you mean?
Yeah, the ones with a ton of buzzwords and yeah, for sure. And they always have bylines. It's like company team, Like it's never like a person. Yeah. I think also with ranking factors, it would be shameful if I didn't just plug the fact that ClearScope works really well. They reverse engineer SERPs, and I've used it on my site. We use it with clients. The team's awesome. They're very forward facing and technically great. ClearScope's great. I don't know how they do it.
Is Bernard letting you win poker games? Is that why you're saying that?
I had beginner's luck the first time. I'm playing again this Saturday, and I'm definitely going to get hosed. So,
how much do you play with?
Usually buy-in is like $100, but you can buy in more. I think last time we had a couple hundred all in, but I won like, I don't know, $100-$200. It was great. Yeah.
How many times this podcast references poker? It's pretty
fun. It is cool. Actually, like I think poker is a game I want to get more into because it is the perfect like metaphor for like real life messy decision making and decision theory, because there's some quantity of luck, there's some quantity of like psychology and kind of deception, and then there's some quantity of just statistics and like pure math. And I think that represents reality more than something like chess does or other games that people tend to like use as metaphors for life. No, I love chess, but it's definitely not representative of like real life decision making. Like Nassim Taleb talks about that. I think it's called the Ludic fallacy, where you use games as representatives for like real life, but they actually don't translate. But I think poker does in many ways. And you have skin in the game too, because you're using your real money to like place bets,
Right. That's cool. Okay, I think we answered this, but I'm not entirely sure, so I'm just going to ask it. If a company has the budget to invest in paid ads, like let's say they're brand new, and they have the budget, they're like, no, let's just throw our money into paid ads. It's still important for them to include organic too for the long term, would you say, right? Or would you say, no, yeah, go with paid and you should be fine?
I hate to give the answer again, but it definitely depends. Yeah. I think like over the course of the company's growth, like you will want some sort of organic or like non-paid channel. Paid tends to have like a diminishing marginal utility over time, right? Because the things you're bidding on get more competitive, more competitors outbid you, right? Mm-hmm. The cost to acquire customers becomes more and more expensive, but the opposite is true in organic. Like it becomes easier and easier, and your marginal cost to acquire customers becomes less and less. Mm-hmm. And often like the two have kind of synergies. So if you're ranking in SERPs, like that's actually going to help you with your Google ads, so I think building out, and also it diversifies your channels. So you're not fully reliant on like one ad platform, where like if their bidding algorithms change or whatever, like you're completely fucked. So I think over the course of your company's like history, like over the course of your future, like you should look into diversifying, but it definitely depends on your company stage and industry and goals and all that stuff.
Right. I know we're at the 40 mark. Is there anything else you want to hit on that we didn't cover that you think is important to include on this topic?
I still think social media traffic all the way.
Still.
Go for the virality.
Yeah. Don't hire a content strategist. Hire a social media marketer. Man. The best ones are straight out of college.
The ones that promise you viral posts.
Yeah.
Only post on TikTok forever.
TikTok and Clubhouse.
You heard it here first.
We're doing it.
Someone's going to take that.
I'm just kidding.
Are we posting on TikTok? Please don't. No, I can't keep up with anything anymore.
David's been doing TikTok dances.
No, you haven't.
Where do you think we're getting all these office hours registrations from?
Straight from TikTok. Oh, God.
I got to go meet my mechanic.
All right.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys.
Got to see a man about a dog. See ya.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.